Hey guys, in this video I want to walk through how I both teach and practice Anjanayesana, or low lunge with the back knee down. It's also known as Chandrasana, it's also known as moon pose. But for this video I'm going to call it Anjanayesana, or I'm going to call it low lunge with the knee down. I changed up how I do it, and why I do it is because I want to focus more on an active range of motion and more for an equal distribution of sensation rather than centralized location. I think what that does is it provides us with a healthier, more active range of motion than if we just passively just lunge down into it. So how I used to practice it is I'd come into my lunge, feet about hip width distance, and I would just come in and just see how low I can get my hips. And it feels good. I mean, this feels good, it looks pretty, it's all that stuff. But what I'm feeling is mostly a centralized location of sensation. And where that is more towards the upper thigh bone, more into the hip. So it's right about where my hip capsule is, right where my ligaments are in the hip joint. And so we're stretching areas that potentially can lead to injury because we're stretching ligaments, we're stretching tendons that don't necessarily need to be stretched, or we don't want them to be stretched. So the way I've changed this up is I have brought my hips back over this knee to start. So my thigh is vertical. You can have the back toes tucked or untucked, but I'm gonna press the foot into the mat as much as you can. And you're gonna feel your quad start to engage. So I'm starting to feel more stretch from here all the way up through. And now I'm gonna pull my foot forward, and you can see my pelvis starts to rotate up a little bit. The sensation grows across the thigh, right? So I'm activating the muscles that I'm stretching, building strength, and also protecting it from just collapsing down into the capsule, into the ligaments. And then I take my front foot, I press it down, and I pull it back. Now I'm building strength in the hamstring, and I'm building strength in the outer left hip. So activating the muscles, building strength. And then from here, what I do is I take my hip points, the two hip points here, and I lift them up. So it's sort of like tucking your tail under without using the tailbone. I'm drawing the belly in, the lower abs in, pulling them up. So I'm more kind of at this 90-degree angle, my thighs straight up, my hip points come right out of the hip, right out of the thigh. So it's like kind of a line that just continues on up. My lower ribs pull in a little bit. And then I'm feeling a lot of work here. I'm keep pressing the foot down and pulling it forward. This isn't as fun, it's not as comfortable, it's not as pretty as this, but we're being more effective. We're getting the entire hip flexors, so quads are hip flexors. One of the quads does cross the hip, so it does help flex the hip. But what I'm doing is I'm strengthening, I'm activating, I'm stretching the quads, the hip flexors all the way up through. I'm engaging my lower belly, so I'm building strength here. I'm building strength in the hamstring, which we don't do enough in yoga, so this is a perfect opportunity to build strength. So I'm not worried as much about overstretching down the road because I'm building a strong, healthy hamstring. And then from here, I just sit here, and if I want more, I'm going to work my hips forward and down. But one thing that'll keep the hip points rotating up is by squeezing this right glute. And when I squeeze this right glute, I feel a deeper stretch. So this is not as fun. It's a lot of work. But once I started doing this, once my students start doing this, I get so much more openness, more flexibility through my quads, and it's an active, stronger range of motion. So I would recommend taking your lunges like this every once in a while. It's fine to come down, it feels good, right? Maybe it looks pretty on Instagram, we can just get into this pose, go into a deep back bend. But what I want is foot down, pull it forward, quads engaged. Left foot presses down, pulls back, hamstrings fired up. Hip points lift up, and then I squeeze this back glute to keep the hips up. And then if I want more, I work the hips forward and down, but I don't lose the action of the legs pulling towards each other. I don't let the pelvis rotate forward. It's kind of like, I like to kind of look at it as like it's a bowl of water. Your pelvis, your hip points are like a bowl of water. And if they start to roll forward, the water is going to spill out. We don't want the water to spill out, so we want to lift the hips up, right? So another topic for another day is let's activate the muscles that we're stretching, right? No more passive stretching. That will build a healthier, stronger, active range of motion. Until next time, namaste.